Okay, so laying down here on the creeper, we got the axle on the big jack stands, and so in order to get, basically we're removing all the armor. So this is one.
How you doing?
This is one long piece that comes off the center section, protects the muffler, the exhaust, and then up here, the muffler, you can see it. So we're very close. When this comes out, right now we've got a huge ratchet strap through the body holding the centerpiece. Then we should be able to drop that down. So this is Friday morning and we're making progress. That is a very big, heavy, ball-busting, pain-in-the-ass piece of armor. She's out. So all we got is one centerpiece left, and then we'll be able to get back to work on this new suspension and changing out those flanges coming out, those yokes coming out of the transfer case.
Added up all these plates, you're easily 300 pounds,
That's
right?
what I think I am. I think I'm between 300 and 500. We still got one more huge piece to take out. There's 3 of them right there. You can see the ratchet strap going through the cabin, and now we're going to bring that big transmission jack underneath this to help us out with the weight, and we'll lower this last piece down. So it's gone extremely well. And all of this to basically get inside here, okay? Because this whole drive shaft, we're going to be undoing all of these bolts, taking it out. This whole loosey-goosey all coming out. This yoke that comes out of the transfer case right there, coming out. There we go. Put some light on. There we go. Now we can see it better. This is all going to come out. We can work on this really good, and it's even going to get better because this piece of armor right here is coming out. All right, you can see what we got going on here. Finally, this piece of armor is out, and where are the problems?
Right here.
Oh yeah, see all those right there? So the heads are cut on the other side, and we'll be blasting those out and probably changing this to just a nice nut and bolt. And with a rock dome washer on the bottom side.
So this one here might be hard to reach because it'll be right under the gas tank. Well, this square fits up in here. Correct. That was the bolt that was hanging us up.
Yeah, that thing should just be removed.
What is that anyway? Why is that?
There's probably an old strap or something, yeah.
This would have been a strap, but why is that strap not there?
Maybe the install directions for this said to remove it and just use the centerpiece of the armor to hold this up, because all of this is hanging right now. You can see we have a clamp on this, so without this clamp, the whole front of the gas tank would be drooping down.
I'll look this up. That'll be a whole nother operation, putting this back together. But I think this is all Moto built armor.
Okay.
I'll look it up. I'll call my buddy at Moto Built and I'll be like, hey, what the hell?
Yeah, right, man.
Hook up a brother here. This isn't right. Maybe I'll drill them all out and thread them. Maybe I'll cut these off and weld a new threaded piece on there.
These are the pieces we're talking about. So these things were just so frozen and rusted and nothing would touch them. So the heads have been plasma cut out on the other side. So if we can get the rest of these out.
You know what I might be able to do too?
Drill a clearance hole.
Now that they're out, I got enough to grab on with vice grips or weld a nut on there. I can heat those up with a torch. The nut trick would probably work here because you got a stem. I can drop a nut over it, weld it.
Okay.
We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. That's going to be the armor reinstall after all the bells and whistles have been upgraded.
We'll figure it out.
So interestingly enough, after all that work with the armor, which we had to take off anyway, we were getting ready to use like a punch and separate. We were going to separate this front drive shaft from the flange in the transfer case. And interestingly enough, it's very well greased right here, and the thing just came out nice and easy. So one JT Gladiator drive shaft. Just a peek at that yoke going into the stock yoke going into the transfer case. What size you got?
Yeah.
32? Not sure.
Whatever.
So 30, we're looking at
30
that.
something.
30 something. I think they made a TV show called 30 something.
32.
32.
Which is probably 1.25-ish.
Well, what's going on, my brother? Hey, look at this. The owner of this Jeep Gladiator just showed up with one coffee.
Way easier than I would have expected.
So this is kind of a surprise. The nut came off real easy, and Mike basically with his hand was able to completely pull this right off the spline. You got the O-ring?
I do.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that gets reused.
Yes, it does.
So here we go. This is the stock yoke. See if we can.
Do you want to get it dirty for a while?
There we go.
Well, we're doing this all 3 of us.
just a good look. Kind of really surprised how easy that just came apart. I mean, no effort whatsoever. Undid the nut, grabbed the yoke, and it just slid right out perfectly.
Socket in there like you would think of like your sway bar end links. So anyway, lining them up is going to be a little bit of a chore because it doesn't stay where you put it. So new yoke for a 1310 CV joint replaces that flange, but you take this big rubber O-ring. Like in the old days, we would put a little bit of RTV in there,
Right.
or on the back of the nut, and that just keeps the oil in the transfer case from seeping down the threads and leaking out. Mm-hmm. So this obviously must do the same job. Anyway.
Just goes right into a little slot.
Yeah, there's a little cutout, there's a little groove. I don't know if you can get a show down in there. There's a recessed groove, maybe 3/8 of an inch deep, that accepts this O-ring.
Yeah, that O-ring is pretty thick too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Reminds me of the O-ring on like a 6-liter Ford diesel intake manifold.
So that nut went in place there, and basically it has a little RTV on the flat side that goes up against the rubber gasket, and then some Loctite on the threads.
That's it, except my socket's stuck in there.
Just got to give her a little tap.
Yeah, I think the yoke.
All right, almost got that thing off. Happily, it's separating nice from the vibration from the impact. Control arm bolts are in on the top one, so
We're trying to get
wrestling the front axle to get the bolts in.
Now it's hanging. The shocks are holding it. We got 2 ratchet straps holding it up. So.
Okay, we have separation on the rear portion of the drive shaft. The front is disconnected from the back of the transfer case, so all that's left is this little load carrier here in the center for this 2-piece drive shaft. 16 millimeter bolt heads, one there and one there, and this thing will drop right down. Meanwhile, the boys are using some come-alongs, and they're putting that front axle where they want it to line the bolts up for the control arms.
What's happening right now is this is moving and the thing is pivoting.
Okay.
Right. Nothing that a come-along can't take care of, and some serious manpower to get that bolt through the lower control arm mount. Outstanding.
Oh, that nut goes right there, Ken.
Outstanding.
BFH, brother.
You want to sign it?
Ken remembers where all these dents and dings came from. He's reminiscing here. But there's our drive shaft out, front drive shaft out, making great strides now that the belly armor's out of the way. So we're gonna be removing this loop here real soon. That's kind of problematic. He's got the loop delete. We're gonna be cutting that flange and separating it right there, measuring down from the catalytic converter, making a cut and putting a brand new piece in there. All right, you are looking at the crazy loop underneath the driver's side right there. So I just cut that out, and this is really sweet. You can see you get a nice new flange right here, and then this fits over. You cut down 5 3/4 of an inch from the catalytic converter. Then this thing can be tightened up right there. It's really nice, really clean.
Oh, thank you. I thought you were talking about me. I gotta go find some about 2-inch long.
No, this is not a trumpet or a French horn that we happen to find next to the motor. This is the ridiculous loop. After the crossover pipe and you get to the driver's side, you get this ridiculous piece of engineering here. All gone. Of course, the kit doesn't come with bolts. That's ridiculous. You pay about $130, and then you got to provide your own bolts and nuts to tighten up the flange. It only comes with the coupling piece, or the strap right here that'll go on over that and tighten that up right there. Compression. All right.
Nice, because you don't have a vibration dam.
Yoke nut comes right off. You can see the big O-ring in there. And Mike's gonna have to gently give this a little tap with a rubber mallet from the back and work this yoke off.
If they're not there,
Also, because of the new Adams drive shaft, this yoke right here is going to come off as well. Now, obviously, we know there's a crush sleeve in there. We're going to use a little finesse with this when we put the new yoke on.
So just be forewarned.
But it's just so nice. So there you go, just a few taps on the back, and that yoke came right off the spline. Just a little. Yeah. How about that, huh? Nice. Go ahead, Mike. We got an interesting thing to make note of.
So here is the old drive shaft yoke. Get this stuff out of the way.
This is coming out of the transfer case.
Now, unlike the front one that had a very similar flange that we swapped out for a conventional yoke, the front one had an O-ring. The rear one has an O-ring, and this O-ring fits down in, zoom in on there. You see that little recessed pocket down in there?
Yep.
Okay, this fits down in that recessed pocket, this big thick O-ring. The nut would sit on top. The O-ring would seal any oil in the rear end that would follow these splines.
Correct.
And it would stop at that O-ring.
Right.
Now on the front, the new yoke for the front drive shaft had that machine recess in it. The rear one does not have a recess machined down in there at the end of the spline. In other words, if you drop this in here, there's nowhere for it to go.
No place for it to go.
And what we don't want is we want the nut has to sit flat on this
that shoulder,
on that stop on the flange. We can't. You do not want. You don't want to pinch this O-ring between the metal and the nut because it will never get tight.
Makes complete sense. So basically you disregard the O-ring on the output of the transfer case going to the rear drive shaft.
Old school fashion, what we usually did on the old ones is take a little bit of RTV and I'm going to put it at the inside of the splines, just like that. Just wipe a little bit around there, and I put it at the inside edge. Inside the spline. Okay, that way, when we slide that on the output, when we slide that over the output, the splines will push that RTV up in there, and it'll seal the splines just fine, so you won't have an oil leak.
And then I also noticed you got RTV on the big collared nut.
Couple drops of, I'm using blue RTV because that's what I had. Red is a little more permanent.
This is the Loctite.
But that'll be fine. This is a lock nut. Normally, if we had one, we'd probably put a new lock nut on.
Okay.
But this has only been on and off once, so we'll be okay with this.
All right, thank you.
Worried. You can see that the splines are not bottoming out. So we know when we tighten this nut up, it's pushing on the black of the flange. It's holding the whole thing together nice and tight. We're gonna take that nut, our calibrated torque wrench, like 6 to 8 ugga-luggas.
6 to 8 ugga-luggas, that's a new term.
That's fine,
All right.
It's on there good. I mean, there is a torque spec,
Yep.
whatever, 200-something pounds.
So what's going on
This is experimental here, by the way.
Mike is basically just making a comparison. He wants to see what this thing reads now. He realizes there's brake drag and so forth. But just to get an idea where we are so that when we put the new yoke into the rear differential, we get it close. What are you looking at?
So I'm looking at one direction about 70 inch-pounds of rotating, and you could feel that it seems like the brakes are grabbing a little bit one way, but average is 70. And the other way, we got about 50. So when we put the new yoke on, we obviously don't want to, if we come up with a number that's now like
150,
100, 150.
Bad juju. All right.
We tighten the crush sleeve too much.
Yep.
We gotta,
always keep in mind that the crush sleeve's in there, and we just don't want to change the preload.
Unlike the transfer case, by the way, which does not have a crush sleeve.
Right.
So
yeah, the transfer case, you could just go to town and torque that thing up. Hit the other side. I saw some movement.
definitely loose.
Yeah, yeah.
If I have to, I'll get a puller on here.
I think you're gonna get it. Here we go. Here's the yoke.
What I'm curious about.
Good look at what you have after we took that out.
I don't know if we won Yukon, and they both had the same brand of Coil bearings that were actually exactly identical to the factory ones. So I mean, like Yukon's not making a bearing. So they're just reboxing.
Loctite on the thread. The back side of the nut has silicone, and Mike will be driving that home with the impact gun.
Kinda home. It's like we're driving it home, but we're dropping it off.
Yeah, this one he's really going by feel. We ended up with matching it pretty close to 50 to 60 inch-pounds of rotational torque. And then we put the big torque wrench on, and I held the yoke so we could just see what this was at. We had, what, 210 foot-pounds of pressure on this nut. So we're pretty happy with that.
Threaded holes are straight through holes.
All right,
Ken
these
is-
two are caught.
Ken is working on the front drive shaft right there coming out of the transfer case. You can see this is the new drive shaft. Made it up to the stock yoke, which is nice. That's real nice. Of course, Loctite on these bolts. Looking good. And then Mike and his dad, Tom, are working on the rear drive shaft, setting that up.
That going good. No.
Try to help you out with taking some of that weight off for you, Mike.
Thank you.
Yep.
That should do it. There's a pilot ring on there, so once you get one started, the rest should. Put a little inward pressure on it and tell me to stop when you feel the hole.
Now we're getting somewhere.
It feels like it started this time. I have another bolt, so I'll start out. I can, since Rick's there holding it.
Yeah, no worries. I got the weight here, yep. Once you got one bolt started, I can just keep the weight up. All right, just removed all the electrical tape off the caps to the U-joints that come with the Adams rear drive shafts, and I will be able to lift that up in place and put it right in that yoke and get the U-bolts on it. All right. U-bolts going on, and then we got some washers and nuts right here for this. So tightening up these U-bolts around the caps on the U-joint. We will tighten it up to the lock nut, or excuse me, the lock washer compresses, and then another quarter turn on each side. Then we're gonna put the transfer case in neutral, rotate the drive shaft so that Mike can get and verify and make sure that the 4 bolts up here at the transfer case end are all set. Put the transfer case in neutral. We'll rotate the drive shaft now. Make sure the bolts at the transfer case are all set. These are all set.
All right.
Beautiful piece of hardware here. Yep, we're good. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna grab my light. There's one that I marked.
Wow, that is nice. When things get going, they get going. So we've already started removing the rear shocks, the rear track bar. Obviously, the end links, we're probably going to end up undoing them because we're going to have to droop the
Took care of that.
Coming?
Yep.
All right, good job.
Now the other one, I didn't see washers on it.
Ken's parts of old, some slightly used, but mostly all pretty good. The Mopar lift is, parts are stacking up here really quick. So happy to say the rear part's going really nicely right now. We're going to be undoing these bolts for the control arms. 21s. Sway bar end links got to be disconnected.
I don't know, maybe not.
You think it'll droop down far enough to release the coil?
Those things are about 4 feet long.
Okay.
So let's see.
We're just loosening up, taking the nuts basically off all of the control arms, so this axle is going to droop down nicely. So that's what we're doing right now. And Mike's removing the
Electrical's
electrical,
undone.
and the axle vent needs to be done. Little spring clip there. Hey, I'm hearing Smokey and the Bandit, man. Don't get better than that.
Yeah.
Good.
How cool.
Oh. Teachers anything?
Hold it. Go ahead. Good. So the ABS sensor is being separated from the brake line. Brake lines, you can see, are very taut, but luckily we're able to flex the axle down low enough to pull these coils out. And then the coil isolators obviously get reused up on the top. But so what we're gonna do right now is we are gonna break these brake lines because we have long new brake lines that are going into the calipers. Disconnected the vent, the electrical to the locker, plenty of room with the e-brake, so we're in great shape here. So Ken bought longer bump stops here. The tops you fight like hell. The rear you can pull out by hand. So these are going in the pile of good spare parts to be sold or given to another Jeeper.
What these are for, rear or front.
All right, rear coils are out. The isolators just pop down. These obviously go way up top there on top of the coil. Going to be undoing the banjo bolt right here for the brake line. The ABS wire has been separated. And Mike is taking off that clip right there. And he'll be undoing that joint right there on the brake line. Banjo bolt's disconnected.
I soaked these yesterday with penetrating oil, and the nuts are still a little.
So that
tight
little
on the brake
clip that you see the fitting go through has like a locking position, and when you put the hose in the right spot, it stops the bottom piece from spinning so that you can unthread the brake line fitting out of it, and that's what's going on right now. We're almost there.
Locking a locating
Yeah,
tab.
so it has you have to put a wrench on the bottom of it. Wow, tight fit, huh?
Yeah, I see that.
Come on now.
Huh. That's weird. Worst case, you could take the bracket off and let it float until you can hook the two together. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we
I've
drilled
had
out
to
that
do that
bracket.
before.
The
close.
aftermarket lines were just a little too big. They've got a different way that they attach. We can put a 3/4 inch nut, a 3/4 inch
like they're
wrench
going,
on the
no?
nut. There you go. I think you just about got it started.
Yeah, I think it's like